Lesson 3.2 is on adding and subtracting expressions. For the most part today, you're going to see your problems where you have two terms in a set of parentheses, and then they will be either added or subtracted by another two terms in a different set of parentheses, like you see on these, okay? Now, don't let the parentheses confuse you. It's just kind of another way to write the quantity of two sets of terms, okay? So we are going to rely on what we did in lesson 3.1 where we had to combine like terms and also using the distributive property as well to help simplify these expressions before we can combine like terms. So we are just going to try to simplify this expression. That's what we're doing. We're combining like terms. So here I have an x and I have a 2x. Okay, they're both positive or plus 2x or plus terms. Okay, positive terms. All right, so we will add those. Right, same sign sum. So 2x plus x is 3x. Now I have a 3 and a minus or negative 1. Different signs, we need to subtract. I get 2. Now remember, I'm leaving room here to put either my plus or minus sign. Okay, we always need to have a addition or subtraction sign in between two terms when we are simplifying expressions, okay? Since 3 is farther from 0, we need to keep the positive in our answer, so kind of like a positive or plus 2. So 3x plus 2 is in simplest form. Moving on, I'm just going to go ahead and put my plus and minus signs above each of my terms so I don't forget that, okay? So if I have anything to combine this negative 8z with, well, I have this positive 8z. My signs on those two terms are different, so we subtract 8 and 8. Well, 8 minus 8 is 0, right? So they basically just cancel each other out. So I'm not even going to write anything there, right? The z's cancel each other out. Now I have 4 and a minus or negative 7. The signs are different. When you subtract, 7 minus 4 is 3. And 7 is farther from 0, so we keep the negative sign. So negative 3, that simplified to negative 3. Now, here we have a little bit different setup, okay? We have this term out in front of the parentheses. We learned what to do on this yesterday or the day before, the distributive property, okay? We need to distribute the 1/2 through each of the terms. And on this set, we need to distribute the 1/4 to each of the terms in the parentheses. So I need to take 1/2 times w, which is 1/2 w, and 1/2 times this minus or negative 6. So remember, you have to pay attention to your signs when we are multiplying as well, right? Same signs on these two, so it's positive. This 1/2 and this minus or negative 6, those are different signs, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And then if I over to the side, I take 1/2 times 6, and I make 6 a fraction, 6 over 1. We want to cross reduce. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. So 3 over 1 is just 3. 1/4 times w is 1/4 w. 1/4 times 12. We cross reduce. 4 can go into 4 and 12. So 3 over 1 is just 3. So signs are the same here. So positive 3. Now we can combine like terms, okay? I have a 1/2 w and a 1/4 w, so we can combine the w's. But we know when we add or subtract fractions, we need to have a common denominator. So 1/2 plus 1/4, all right? The least common multiple of 2 and 4 is 4. I took 2 times 2 to get 4, so I take 1 times 2 and get 2. 1 times 1 is, or sorry, 4 times 1 is 4, so I multiply this by 1. So I take 1 times 1 and get 1. And we add because our signs are the same. 2 plus 1 is 3 over 4w. And then I have a minus 3 and a positive 3. Well, your signs are different on those 3, so that means to subtract, so those cancel each other out. So all we're left with is 3/4 w. Now, when I have positive signs or plus signs in between my two sets of parentheses, okay, what we just talked about is what I want you to do, okay? You're just combining like terms. Now, if you notice, here I have a minus sign or a negative sign in front of the second set of parentheses. What that really means is there is really kind of a 1 here, so it's really saying we need to distribute a -1 through the two terms in the parentheses. So -1 times -x and -1 times 6. So what I want you to do is anytime there is a minus sign that separates the two sets of parentheses, we are going to change that to an addition sign, but then that means we need to change each of the signs in the parentheses, okay? So really we're kind of taking everything times -1, all right? And if you take something times -1, all right, it just is going to change the sign to the opposite sign of what each of these terms were, okay? So now instead of having a -x, it's a positive x, and instead of having a positive 6, we have a -6. All right, now that will help us avoid some confusion. So now we can just, now we change the problem to like we had in one of the examples above, and now we're just gonna combine like terms. So 5x and a now positive x, so same signs, they're both positive, so we add 5 and 1 is 6x, and then I have a 6 positive and a now minus or -6, different signs on those, so subtract, 6 minus 6 is 0, so all we're left with is 6x. Moving on. Okay, here I have this minus sign. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna treat this, okay? Now since I actually have a term out in front of the parentheses, we do need to distribute. But once again, first thing I want you to do is you're gonna change this positive sign, or this minus sign to a positive, and then change the 2 to a negative, because you need to understand you are distributing a -2 through the 4y and the -3 and not a positive 2. That really means a -2. So I can't do anything with this side yet, so I'm just gonna bring it down and I'm gonna bring my plus sign. And I know because I put plus a -2, I know I'm taking -2 times 4y and -2 times minus or -3. Signs are different here, so I know my answer is gonna be negative. 2 times 4 is 8, so -8y. And then -2 times this -3, signs are the same, so it's positive. 2 times 3 is 6. Now we can just combine like terms. I have a 7y and a -8y. Signs are different, so we subtract. 8 minus 7 is 1y. 8's farther from 0, so it's a negative. Now you could just write -y. You don't have to write -1y. And we have a positive 5 and a positive 6. Signs are the same, so we add. 6 plus 5 is 11. 6 is farther from 0, so it's plus or positive 11. So -1y or just -y plus 11. All right, last example. Here, we need to distribute this 1/8 through, and we need to distribute this -1/3 through. So because I have this minus sign in the middle, I'm gonna change that to plus, and then that term out in front now becomes a negative. So 1/8 times -8, right? We can cross reduce. I get 1, and signs are different, so it's -1c. And then I have 1/8 times 16. We can cross reduce the 16 and the 8, divide them both by 8. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, so 2 over 1 is just 2. And my signs were the same, so it's positive 2. Now we need to take -1/3 times 6. Cross reduce. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1. All right, and signs were different. I have a negative and a positive, so it's -2. And -1/3 times 3c. Cross reduce. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 1 is 1. So it's just 1, but signs once again were different. So it's -1c. Now we just combine like terms. -1c and a minus or -1c. Signs here are different, or sorry, they're the same. They both have a minus or negative in front of the 1c. So same signs, sum, we add. 1 plus 1 is 2. C, now 1 and 1, they're both the same distance away from 0. So since they're both negative, and we ask ourselves which one's farther from 0, it is a -2c. And then I need to combine this positive 2 and this minus or -2. Well, I have different signs here. So we subtract. 2 minus 2 is 0, so they just cancel each other out. So all I'm left with is -2c. All right, on lesson 3.2, page 90, you're gonna do 8 through 16 evens, 20 through 24 evens, and then 32 through 34.